What's up, everyone, and welcome to Variant, the podcast, where I'm distraught, Tim.
He is distraught. I'm sitting here just waiting to kick this show off because Arris is very upset. Why, you might ask? Because it is really, really hot in Texas.
It is 105 for the foreseeable future. The low.
Not for the foreseeable.
For the foreseeable future, yes.
For the next few days, yes. But
No.
it was 100. I got in my car yesterday and it said 110 degrees.
Yeah, that's happening.
And I was like, all right.
I just looked at the 10-day forecast. Like, for the rest of the week, it's anywhere between 103 to 106 degrees high. Then on like Tuesday of next week, it drops. The high is 97.
Right, drops to the high 90s.
And then the next day on Wednesday, we're right back up to 103.
Right back, yeah. So for the next like couple of weeks, we're going to be largely in the hundreds, which is like, it's a typical Texas summer when you're in the heart of the summer.
I want out. I want out.
It is really hot right now, but
God.
I will say I was actually talking to one of our guys, Alan. I was talking to him earlier today, and I was like, it's like the fall here is the payoff for the 2 or 3 months that it's like insanely hot. Because then you get into the fall and the temperature drops so dramatically. It's like beautiful for like 6 months. You get some cold snaps, where it gets real cold, but mostly it's just really nice. So it's like that's the payoff. No. The spring is really nice.
Because then we go into
actually we get like 9 months of like good weather.
But then we go into the whole like, it's freezing. The freaking infrastructure here freezing, sucks. So it's like, we can't handle the cold.
The last few years
you're not going to have power.
But it's only like snaps. So like we get like a couple of like freezing snaps. And then the last couple of years we've gotten like those ice storms.
And then.
You remember in 2012, it was our first full year here. And we had that first winter storm that we had never experienced in our lives. And everything just turned into marshmallows.
Oh yeah, but
the marshmallow world.
See, that wasn't.
But it was an ice storm, so it wasn't snow. It was just everything was covered in.
That's another thing.
It looked like I was in some kind of a video game
where it mostly doesn't rain or snow. It's like the freaking ice, where it's like it doesn't turn into fluffiness. It's just sleet, and everyone's like,
when the ice storms hit,
hope you got groceries because if you drive, you're gonna die. So it's really. But also the thing Texas is known for, it's even more infuriating, is. It'll be 100 degrees in the daytime sometimes. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 60. It's like, and then people's allergies go in like haywire. Just in general. Like Texas is known for it like being like freezing this like for 1 hour.
Not
then
60s,
the next hour it's like hot. Like it just changes so dramatically.
I mean, right now, the legit temperature swings it's like 100 to 105 in the day. And then it's like 75 to 77 degrees at night.
Yeah. And people's allergies are going crazy.
It's actually really nice at night.
No, I've been seeing like
just go stand outside with the dog.
There's like this reel or TikTok that went viral where it's like this guy opens the door at night and he's just drenched. So he's like, it's hot at night too? Because it's true. It's just that stale, gross heat.
Yes. It feels like the way I described it the first time I came here, I flew in to check out some places in Dallas. And the way I described it to my wife is it feels like someone's just holding a blow dryer to your face.
Yeah, no. For sure. You know what?
In the summertime. That's what it feels like.
I just went to San Diego Comic-Con, got back, San Diego, right? It's hot, but not like it's a different heat. It's not that dry. Like
San Diego's beautiful pretty much year round.
So I got used to that because I was there for a few days. Landed, waiting for my wife to pick me up at the airport. Outside, I'm like, there's the heat. And my body instantly was like, it wasn't like this in San Diego.
Have you ever driven to the desert? Like in New Mexico or Arizona?
No, I don't think so.
Nevada?
No.
Oh, dude. It's amazing because when you get into Arizona, certain parts of Arizona, when you're crossing like from California and you get into Nevada and those areas, particularly I would say Nevada and Arizona, you get into places where like Death Valley and all that stuff, where there's signs before you enter certain areas and stretches.
Turn back.
Where they're like, don't run your air conditioner because your car can overheat. So make sure you have a full tank of gas and don't run your air conditioner like nonstop. You got to keep it above like the temperature at a certain point so it doesn't overwhelm your air conditioner. So because if your car breaks down, that's super, super dangerous. Everybody could die. So don't do that. Like there's signs.
Is there a sign that says warning? If your car breaks down, super dangerous, everyone could die.
Super dangerous, everyone could die. And then there's skull and crossbones. But yeah, it's the weirdest thing. I drove through it a few years back and it's like, well, what do you do? Like if you, now I'm curious, if my car legitimately broke down in that stretch, Like, what's the game plan? Is our backup coming?
You do
is our flares that you can shoot up? And some like Desert Eagle comes in?
A Little Rascals. What's the number for 911?
All right, so that's why Arris is distraught.
It's a good movie, okay?
It is a good movie. Anyway, so what we are talking about today, we figured since we are in our third episode, full episode back, weekly episode, we would take questions from you guys because it has been quite a while since we've done so. So I went to the community page on our YouTube channel as well as Twitter. You guys sent over a bunch of questions, and I figure we could just kind of, I'm just going to hit Arris, and then he can just kind of like, start the conversation, and then we'll just go back and forth. This is just going to be questions from all of you. You guys actually came with some pretty good ones. There's quite a few. So let's see. I figured the best one that I saw as far as like something to start with is oh man, I'm sorry, but I am not going to try to pronounce your name because I don't want to butcher it. It might not be your name. It might just be a crazy handle. But the question is, why do you think writers keep disregarding Peter Parker's Spider-Man? And should Peter Parker's Spider-Man be laid to rest and have other spiders like Miles, Ben Reilly take over? I thought that was an interesting question because it sparked other thoughts for me that were kind of things that I had been thinking about for the last year or so that I haven't said really out loud yet that I probably will now. But your take first.
Well, I don't know if they are necessarily disregarding him. He's very prominent in the books right now. Mm-hmm. He actually just got Doc Ock's arms, which is really, really cool. And now Doc Ock has a new set of tentacles, if you will. So he's been very controversial, I will say that. Like his new Spider-Man run, people have not been digging because they keep they keep taking stuff away from Peter. Like people just kind of feel bad.
That's what I took from it.
That's what you took from it?
That's what I took as far as when he said disregarding. Like, why do you think they're minimizing him, taking things from him, elevating other spiders over him, things like that? It's over the last, little while, not necessarily just in the present.
But it's kind of always been Peter's thing, I feel. Hence, like that's just Parker luck. Like that's literally a line he's had all the way back from like the day. So because when Stanley created him, he's been that character that's supposed to have like money problems, girl issues and all that stuff. So that they kind of just do that. And he goes on like, he'll get married to MJ and then they'll reboot it. He'll get taken away with Mephisto or something like that. But I don't know. I don't know if I don't feel that they do that much. Like I get what people are saying, like, especially in recent years, how they've not been letting him catch a break. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily to propel other characters. I think that's just certain writers because they were doing the same thing to Black Panther. Like Black Panther's last two runs, people, especially diehard Black Panther fans, have not been liking at all. No. So I don't think
I would say the most recent one especially.
Yeah. So I don't think it's necessarily Marvel trying to do that as well as it's just like the writers take they approve at that time, which I guess obviously Marvel has to approve. So I don't know. But I do think with the new generation with like Miles Morales, he's kind of like, he's definitely this era Spider-Man and he kind of relates more to this generation in the sense that like, he's from New York, he wears the Jordans and all that stuff. He's like, he's on social media. It's just like a more modern, younger, youthful Spider-Man where Parker he's like an adult now. He's no longer that teenager. Yeah. He's always, so I think that's probably a big reason for it. And then obviously the Spider-Verse movies just kick that into high gear because he is a really cool character.
So that goes to my follow-up question. Do you think that these younger generations that are coming up, right, after you and I, do you think that they kind of cling to and relate more to Miles than Peter Parker, and Peter Parker is maybe becoming a little bit unrelatable for the newer generations and is more of the character for our generation and is going to at some point kind of trail off?
I'd say currently that's kind of how they're doing it, but I don't think long-term, no, because it kind of goes in waves, right? So like legacy.
I'm saying like the story, like
do you think
like the story backgrounds of the different characters and even where the characters have gone? Like Peter Parker's been around a really long time, right? Even Miles in the comics, he's kind of a young guy.
Yeah.
Peter, they play Peter relatively young, but he's been around a long time, so he kind of feels older.
He does.
And they play him as he's married, he's got kids, all that kind of stuff. Are they moving it in a direction, and is the character moving in a direction to where it's like it's going to be not as relatable to some of the younger generations, and they're going to kind of see themselves in Miles and some of these other characters more. In your opinion.
I don't know. That's so weird. It's like a yes and no because it just really, it ebb and flows, right? Like with the MCU, Peter Parker, very young, like, hey, Mr. Stark, like youthful Spider-Man. That's the one we could all relate to. In the comics right now, Parker is older and, you know, they got the younger ones like Spider-Gwen and Miles and stuff like that. So, but I think it's only a matter of time because as we know, every few years, Marvel's like, or DC comic books are like, let's reboot. And they might take Parker back to a more youthful state and stuff like that. But I think in general, Peter will always be the most popular Spider-Man just because he's the legacy character. He's Peter Parker. You know what I mean? Like I don't think, to answer what you're saying earlier, I don't think he'll go away and people will be like, you know, like we don't like him as much as Miles Morales and stuff like that. You always have a section of the fandom that likes this character more than that character. But I think overall, like Spider-Man will always be Peter Parker.
I will say that for me, because I agree with most of what you're saying, the only thing is I have these lingering thoughts in the back of my head is how much of that opinion of ours is bias. Because that's the Spider-Man we grew up with. That's the Spider-Man
but Spider-Man was way before both of us.
Oh, no doubt. But we grew up on Peter, though.
Yeah.
In cartoon form, in movie form, in comic form. Even though he way precedes us, it's still our our Spider-Man too. Right. Yeah. So it's our generation Spider-Man, just like it was those who become before us. Since then, however, the Spider-Verse has really expanded.
You're saying there was no one to really compete with Peter back then?
Not in any serious way.
Yeah.
Right. It was still Peter Parker. Well, that's changed as we got older. Right. Yeah, and then other characters were introduced, you know, while we were growing up, but they really kind of took off during these next generations.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that will hold, because everything evolves. Everything changes over time. Nothing stays the same forever. And that leads to the thing that I have been thinking for the past year, and I wanted to get your take on it, is because, I mean, as far as the rest of this goes, I kind of agree with most of what you said, but I've just been thinking about the bias part. And the thing I've been thinking about beyond that is, at what point should one or both of the major publishers embark on a series of epic conclusion stories for the legacy characters, put them to bed, literally kill them off? Either they die in glory, they end, and it's a brand new wave. Because, like, you look at the condition of comics as a whole, right? The position that and the direction that comics are going, where there's this kind of sense of like, are comics starting to fade? Is anime overtaking? Where's the originality? Stuff like this, right? All these debates and conversations that are going on, a lot of it's surrounding numbers and sales and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, at what point, because nothing can ever stay the same forever, at what point do you go, we've told every story that you can possibly tell with these individual characters. It's becoming not just redundant, it's getting a little bit ridiculous at some points. Kind of like, how overpowered can you make characters to try and make them more compelling or to do something new? How many different ways can you tell the same story with the same characters and or villains?
Right.
At what point do you say, we've told all the stories that we can tell with these characters, it's time to reset and introduce new characters that we can tell new stories with in a that feels fresh, it feels new, and it's for a new time, and move that on? Because even just from a fan standpoint, I think it would be really compelling for a publisher to say, we are bringing all legacy characters to an end, and we're embarking on a 2-year event that is going to lead to the end of the line for every legacy character, you know, that you're familiar with, like all the Avengers and so forth. Just say in the case of Marvel. And all of them are gonna come to the end of the line, and their successor is gonna be announced. And from then on, it's just new stories, new characters. And I would love to see that be followed by new characters introduced, not even just characters that also already exist, but they just haven't been around as long, but actual new characters get introduced, and them have to think that process through of like, what might that look like, and what characters might step up and become the hero. things like that and make it feel like something actually happened. Because that's one of the problems we always talk about with comics, right? Anytime a character dies, they kill these characters off left and right. Case in point, just happened with Miss Marvel. Everybody made this big to-do. Oh, how could they kill Miss Marvel off when this, that, and the other thing? And they killed her in the comic. She was back like a month later.
Mm-hmm.
They've already resurrected her, and she's got more power than she had before. And that happens. So now whenever they tell a story where something that should be compelling and impactful for that particular character, particularly the famous ones, like the really popular characters, nobody even but bats an eye. It's not compelling. It's not interesting because like, oh, they're going to be back in a month. It doesn't mean anything. Like right now, the Justice League is supposed to be dead. And everybody knows like, yeah, but that's just for like 5 months. It's for a year, and then they'll be back.
Yeah, I don't think you could permanently kill the legacy characters off, though, because you kind of be killing. That's money. Like they can never.
I hear you, and that's part of my thinking is how much of that thinking is our bias, though, is because we grew up on those characters. We love those characters. They're great characters, but at some point, how many different stories can you really tell with the exact same characters?
Well,
before it just becomes you dull the nerve. And nobody really is interested anymore because it's like this is the same thing, just kind of slightly altered.
But it kind of just like resets, right? Because it's for a new generation. Because by the time we'll be dead and gone, and they'll just be telling you stories again for the next generation. You know what I mean? So it'll be new like every 2 generations or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious because I'm not 100% sure, especially because of the way technology is changing things, the way that we're consuming entertainment is changing things.
It's just
so much of the comic space is still, as far as who's spending the money, it's still our generation is the dominant force.
For now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For now.
But that's different than in the past.
Yeah. It'll be, I mean, again, because the companies would be gambling on. Because no company, whether it's Warner Brothers, Disney,
it would be a risk. For sure.
There's no way that the cash flow that would instantly stop. Because imagine if tomorrow they said, "Oh, we're no longer doing Peter Parker stories or Steve Rogers, Captain America, or whatever." It's like, say what? Like you never, and then you just have to accept whoever this new character is taking on the mantle.
It would be definitely a gamble, and that's why I don't think it'll ever happen.
Yeah,
because it's money. Ultimately, they're going to look at this from the lens of money. But however, as a creator, I can also say that type of thinking when you're basing everything on money, and I think we're actually seeing it play out right now with the MCU, and we've been watching it play out in terms of Warner Brothers and DC films, is when you put money first and you make your decisions creatively based on whatever trendy thing or whatever you think is going to make money, oftentimes it leads to creative laziness. And it leads to bad storytelling, which in turn gets just rejected by the audiences, and you wind up shooting yourself in the foot. It becomes counterproductive at some point.
Yeah, I also think though they're like people don't really mind repetitiveness that much because like what's like the standard? They say there's only really like 2 or 3 different stories you could even tell.
Yeah,
and you just do it in different ways. Like you disguise it and do it different ways, but it's root of the story is pretty much the same thing, right? Yeah. So it's like it's kind of like that where. You're never really going to get tired of it because then you would get tired of like, people say Avatar is Pocahontas because they're very, very similar, but they're 2 different movies and Avatar is extremely successful. Pocahontas is another, iconic, story and film. So I don't think people necessarily get tired of it as long as they're compelling.
Well, like Avatar, I would go back to my original point, which is that Avatar, the reason that works and the people are willing to overlook the fact that it's like, okay, this is like Pocahontas is because they're new characters. It's a whole new world. It's new world, new characters, this new story, this new, not just individual characters, but this entire race of beings with a backstory and all the stuff that people are able to explore, seeking and like, oh, around the corner, there might be something new. I've never seen this before. Mm-hmm. I recognize elements of the story that are familiar, which gives me a sense of connection.
But that's kind of like the whole Elseworlds or, what if stories with Marvel, right? Mm-hmm. Or DC, where you have like Ultimate Spider-Man, it's Peter Parker, but it's a different version of Peter Parker. Spider-Verse, kind of the same thing. It's just alternate versions of either a Peter Parker Spider-Man or someone else. And, DC's got the Elseworlds. So you're still getting these different takes, which I think is what moves it forward. And a lot of the fan favorite stories are the stories that are not even in continuity.
I can see this whole idea is depressing you.
No, like a lot, like a lot of them, like think about it,
this would be awful.
Oh, it would be terrible. But like I think you can have your cake and eat it too. it's because again, with Elseworlds and all that stuff, you can get your different takes. You could have your Injustice Batman or whatever, your Superman that kills or Batman that kills, and still have your main thing. And a lot of times, like Injustice universe has proved, that even becomes more popular than the main stuff. So, but then you could have the diehards who still want to go back to that. So,
well, like for instance, and this is kind of like how I war gamed it out in my head as I've been thinking about this for a little while. Like, how would a major publisher go about that while still maintaining a cash flow, right? Because especially up front, you would have to figure out, like, how do you keep, the gears turning while we kind of build and expand on this new version of the world.
You do Batman Beyond.
What you would do is you would tell, because like you said, you have Elseworld stories, you have multiverse, stuff like that. I would personally look to do something like Elseworld stories, but within proper time horizons. So I would tell stories about Batman prior to his death that fill in gaps, or Elseworld stories that are separate, but it's clear there's a time delineation.
So it's kind of like what Star Wars is.
Very similar. So but it's like past this timeline, he doesn't exist. He died. And everything past that. So you would have the main, let's say Marvel again, 616. You would have the main universe, right? And everything that passes this point, all the new stories, all the new events, everything is in, because you could even insert like how those deaths infected or, just overall affected the story of each individual character, the successors of the individual heroes, but also the universe as a whole. You would have opportunities to memorialize those characters and show like the repercussions of their life and death. Like all these different things you can incorporate into this new story while still here and there inserting like Elseworld stories or things that happened prior to their death, things that fill in gaps.
It is an interesting...
Especially if you launch the new characters during that 2-year type event, where you're telling the last stories of those individual characters, because you're giving yourself a lot of time to build something new, continuing to make money while introducing, the ends of these characters.
It is an interesting thing, but like it's madness to never go back to those characters. Again, because
I'm the Mad Hatter of the group.
It's madness just because like, it's kind of like Greek mythology or anything. Like again, I'm not the only one who said it. I'm not the first one to say it, but these characters have become like modern day, like Greek mythology, right? Like especially Batman.
That's
Superman,
our version, yeah.
Yeah, like Batman.
Without
Superman,
actually
Spider-Man.
believing that they're gods. I hope.
But so it's one of those things where it's a timeless story where even if you were for 5 years, be like, you're not getting a single Clark Kent Superman story. That would it would be building and building and be like, okay, so when they finally do, it would just blow the roofs off because people have waited like a decade for this now. Because people are always going to want to long for the original thing. It's why you could give.
But for how long though?
I mean,
because if you introduce a whole new thing,
but who's going to stick it out just to stick it out? Like just because
the new generations will.
But I think the new generations will inherently especially when we're talking about comic books, will know where their lineage is linked to. So if you're a purist, as one would say, you still would want to know about like, oh, well, Peter's the first.
Yeah, and you would still have that. And you could even still continue to play with it in animated and in live action form. Like you'll still have that capability. I'm talking about purely in the comics.
Oh, purely getting rid of them in the comic books?
Yeah, no. Yeah, just in comics.
But I feel like that's even worse
because then
that's where the real pure. That's the reason why people get pissed off about the movies, because of the comic book nerds.
I'm purely talking about if American comics want to find sustainability going into the next 20, 30, 40 years. I just am wondering, like, how do you continue to tell what may end? It's becoming a common theme in what you're hearing from people, a redundancy of storytelling with the same characters. How long can you actually sustain that?
Forever.
You know what I mean? It's like, I look at it forever. The bias is real. So, but just like, because I think as a Tolkien fan,
my daughter doesn't know a quarter of all the Spider-Man. They're going to be new to her. Okay, they're going to be new.
That's not fair. That's cheating. She grew up in your house. So, but I think of like as a Tolkien fan, right? I think of as someone who absolutely loves just being completely immersed in the Middle Earth and the entire world that he built. I think to myself, would he still be writing stories about Middle Earth, 50, 60 years later, and I don't think he would. I think he would have told a certain amount of that story, and he would have said, this is the story of that world, and it would have, this is it, and you just you revisit it. Now, comics obviously is different.
It's
different.
It's very, very, it's actually one of the few forms of media or art forms that is so perpetually ongoing. Like there's no, every movie trilogy comes to an end. TV series comes to, even something like Friends that went 10 seasons.
Sure.
Years and years, but it came to an end. Yeah. Comic books were on deck since 1939, Superman, if you want to say that's the start. We've been on decades and it's still going and going with no end in sight. So it's one of the rare and kind of only because even video games and stuff come to an end. Well, yeah. Video games are kind of more. They're a newer art form, but they're even Mortal Kombat's rebooting right now. Yeah. So it's kind of in line with the comic books.
Yeah,
and the same characters.
There's similarities in that, you'll have Call of Duty.
Yeah. Point is, you have comic books is very rare in that it's so perpetually ongoing that there's not an end.
It has had it has really had a long lifespan.
Yeah.
But again, just because it's had a longer lifespan than most forms of modern entertainment that we're familiar with, it doesn't mean that it will go on for eternity. Just because, and again, I think you're starting to see some of that wear because you already had seen some of that fall off go on in comics prior to the emergence of the live action, the new golden age, which was really introduced from Marvel, right? And some of these live action films. You can go back all the way to Superman in the 70s, Tim Burton's Batman.
Talking about the golden age of superhero films?
But this kind of new second golden age of comic storytelling was really kicked into high gear by the MCU.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? I think everyone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So
Blade really set it off. Let's
yeah.
That's
again, there was movies that sprinkled in that were popular, people liked and stuff like that. But it was really once the MCU started telling this multifaceted, coherent storyline across multiple different characters and movies and so forth that it just took things to another stratosphere.
For sure.
Comic-Cons exploded. It just went really bonkers. Prior to that, there was a lot of serious ups and downs in the comic industry, right? Where there was many instances where they weren't sure if they were going to survive, just financially.
Again, Blade saved Marvel.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different examples of that. Same thing at DC, right? So at what point, so now if you get to a place where you're starting to see this kind of lull on the live action side, the very thing that was kind of your nitrous that was fueling your industry, and that starts to wane in any serious way, what do you do? And I'm talking about, again, purely on the comic side, because the film and TV is has been feeding the comic side, the interest in the comic side. Now, I'm not talking about diehards. The diehards are always going to be there.
If you're DC, you hire Jeff Johns again to fix it like he did for Doomsday Clock, and don't ruin it this time after Doomsday Clock.
That's not going to happen. So plan B.
He was at San Diego?
No, was he?
He was there just, walking. I'm sure he had his meetings and stuff like that. He wasn't on a panel or anything.
He was wearing a Heisenberg mask.
But he was there, and I was like, oh my God, it's Jeff Johns. He's one of the few.
Did you see him?
Not personally. My buddy saw him at a restaurant and took a picture with him.
Oh, okay.
But he's one of the few. Him and Jim Lee are one of the few who I've never got a chance to meet in person yet.
Yeah.
They've eluded me.
No, we met Jim.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. We had that one DC meeting we went to. We met him very briefly.
Yeah, but it was that was
we didn't sit down with him.
Yeah, that's not no. That's
Oh, we did meet him.
But that's not the same. You know what I mean?
Whatever. But so your take is, well, and I would agree with the part that it's probably never going to happen, but you would disagree that it should happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Hard disagree.
No, don't touch my people, my characters.
Craziness over here getting rid of.
All right,
Bruce
let's move on.
Clark and Pete.
Let's move on.
What is this?
Let's move on to the next question, shall we?
Next thing you know, you want to reboot Santa Claus. Let's get rid of Kris Kringle.
Look at this, just in line with what you just brought up. Have you read Jeff Johns' JSA run? Yes, obviously we've been covering it on the channel, so that just means you're not watching the channel. So thanks for exposing yourself right here on the podcast. Appreciate you. Now, but the next part of the question is, who is your favorite JSA character? This is an easy one for me.
Yeah, I already know it's probably going to be. I already know what yours is, which is kind of my go-to. It's probably Dr. Fate. It's for you,
without question.
So I'm going. That was probably my go-to, but I'm gonna go Jay Garrick Flash.
Oh wow,
Jay Garrick Flash.
You're gonna pull a left turn.
Yeah, because just to be different, because I'd probably say Dr. Fate, but I don't want to give the same answer. But I love the original speedster Jay Garrick, and also Alan Scott Green Lantern. That's just they're like the OG. So especially I like how Jay as a character, he's always like that father figure, like in the Flash universe. Definitely. It's really cool to see him like he's one of the few, because when you really get into the lure of like JSA and stuff like that, a lot of heroes don't like passing on the torch so easily. If that makes any sense, they're kind of like very like protective of like, no, I'm the Green Lantern or I'm the Batman or blah, blah. They're not just like willing to help out, you know, where Jay Garrick is very like, nah, I got you. He's like that loving dad or uncle. It's like, come here, I'll show you the ropes. And I really dig that. If you read him a lot, you get that vibe too. But I like that he's just very willing to help out like all of his successors, whether it be Barry, Wally, Bart, or any of the other speedsters.
He's kind of like the Mufasa of the Flash.
Someday this land will be yours.
My Disney references. All right, I think that was a solid answer. Mine is an easy one. It's just Dr. Fate. I freaking love Dr. Fate. I love his backstory. I love the character, the way he's portrayed. I love his power set. That's one of my
Pierce
guys.
Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan. Listen, man, don't even get me started on that. He was done dirty.
Man, he was a perfect casting.
He was
too.
Such a great casting. It was just so poorly used. Okay, so next question is coming from Derek G on Twitter. Love Derek you guys. G. Longtime follower, first time replier.
He's a G.
That is the most radio answer.
Did he say first time what?
Yeah. Love you guys. Longtime follower, first time replier. Hey, love you back, brother.
Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah. He says, Derek wants to know, do you believe in what Bob Iger said about how the MCU shows are interfering with the quality of the MCU movies?
Yes.
Simple.
Yeah. Yes. No, I think I just went on a rant with this recently. I think the Disney Plus Marvel shows are actually probably the worst thing to happen to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the sense that they got in over their head. Like, I think they just, because Feige, obviously, the head of, Marvel Studios, did a great job clearly the first 10 years, but it's because we were getting like, what, 2 to 3, well, at the beginning, 1 to 2 movies a year.
It was 1.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying as it ramped up.
And they were really scattered at first. Initially, they were really scattered.
Iron Man and Hulk came out the 2008. I think they both came out the same year.
Yeah, but they didn't really consider, that was before Disney.
What?
The Iron Man and the Hulk.
The Edward Norton Hulk? No, that had a freaking Easter egg and everything into the MCU.
No, I'm saying it was still the MCU, but it was Disney didn't own it at that point.
Oh, yeah, Disney
That was prior to Disney taking over Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
It really launching into kind of this whole, where everyone fully understood that these things were connected.
That's what I'm talking about. Like the first, 10 years or whatever, just in general, like it slowly ramped up. And even at its peak, it was like 3 films a year, but no shows. Then when Disney Plus comes, now you're having 3 films a year. I think even 4 at one point, and like 3 shows. So it was just too much for people to like keep up with and stuff. And then even I think on Logistica on their end, like you have so many like directors and creatives wanting to do their own thing in this, but it all has to fit cohesively. And it just was very loose. And that's why you got a lot of projects that like this lives on its own, which is cool and stuff. But at the same time, when it comes time to rope it back in, a lot of times it felt weird, where it's like, well, where's Moon Knight going to show up now? We know he's in the universe, but that doesn't really fit. And then they were even telling stories that like I felt, because that was one of the things Feige said, where it's in the shows, you could explore stories you don't have time to explore on screen. But like when you break that down, what that really means is you have time to explore. Because if you're willing to take it out of a film, it's clearly not the good stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
So that sounds horrible, but if it's not going to make it into a feature blockbuster film, that means it's like a B story,
right?
That's not as cool,
or something that isn't the main story,
right? Yeah. And that didn't translate a lot of the time in the Disney Plus shows. I felt like I would actually say I think they're really 50-50 with their shows. Like across the board?
I would say it's less than 50-50.
Oh, yeah. I guess that'll come down to a matter of opinion. But I think
it's all subjective.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just too much. And they got away from because they were never building to anything too, right? With phase 4 and 5, it felt like the first 10 years, like, oh, Thanos, all this stuff, the Avengers, like you're building to the Avengers. Awesome. They first assembled. Everyone's losing their minds. Then after that, you're like, oh, Thanos, we're going to get the Infinity Gauntlet. It all built to that. And like Cap had a really good arc. Robert Downey Jr. had a really good arc. They threw Black Widow in there, and the way she weaved in there with like Cap and Bucky, like everything was just so great. And her relationship with Clint Barton, Hawkeye, and vice versa, and all that stuff. And they paid a lot of that stuff off in some of the Disney Plus shows. Like I still think Hawkeye is one of the better ones, and not talked about nearly enough. But I think overall it was just kind of like we need to introduce new characters because we just got rid of a bunch, so we need new ones. Let's hope they stick. And it got rushed.
I honestly think another part of the problem may have been that because you have so many different characters, or not characters, creators involved now, and because you need all these different directors for the various properties because there's so many things going on that each creator wants to do something new and fun. They want a big reveal for their particular project, right?
For sure.
Which means you've got to come up with something clever or whatever. You can't just tell a singular story. You know, I would say Falcon and Winter Soldier was one example where they largely did that. They really didn't introduce a lot new. They just kind of introduced new elements for characters we're already familiar with. But most of the shows, like I would say She-Hulk, for instance, is a great example where they introduced Scar at the end. And it's like, first of all, that was just it felt so half-baked. It just felt so slapped
He's
in
Hulk's
there.
son.
And it looked terrible. It felt terrible for anyone who likes those stories like me. And it's like, are we actually ever going to see that character again? Are we going to see that character become anything?
Yeah, in 5 years.
Yeah, it's right. So I think that also has played a role. Is there's too many cooks in the kitchen, just from the Disney brass on the executive side who have their own kind of agendas. You know, from in terms of like money making and so on, to, you know, this just so many different directors and producers and stuff like that. It's like anything when it makes a certain amount of money rather. Well, it just expands way and it becomes bloated and it winds up kind of collapsing under its own weight at some point.
I think with Disney Plus too, they got too much on the because one of the things they pushed and they were pushed early on and very vocal about was like every movie feels different. Like Ant-Man is a heist movie. Right, like Winter Soldier is more like a boring like espionage movie and stuff like that.
Right.
So like everything has their own feel, and then they went kind of like overboard with that with Disney Plus, where they're like, you know, like Miss Marvel will be like a kids show for like, you know, that kind of Disney tween kind of area. Then we'll have like almost like a rom-com action with She-Hulk, and then we'll do kind of like a little like Egyptian sci-fi with Moon Knight, and then they kind of just were trying to go all over to have something for everyone.
Yeah.
But like, since you weren't getting the general population for each show, you're just getting little sections, but everyone's not agreeing as a whole that each show is good because it's so niche to specific groups. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's definitely true. I mean, all of these things I think factor in, but I guess the easy answer is yes. We agree that the shows have largely been to the detriment of the overall quality of the MCU. All right, so let's move on to the next question. I've got David Kelly on Twitter says, since Batman and Hulk are each of your favorite comic characters, which character within their respective stories would you most like to see make their live action debut?
So the question is, what story arc would I like to be translated into live action from that character?
He says, which character within their respective stories? So within the world, the individual world of that character, say Batman or the Hulk. So for you, it would be Batman. They're saying me, the Hulk. Which character that is almost exclusively tied to the Hulk or is most closely tied to the Hulk or Batman that has not yet made their live action debut would you like to see make their live action
Which
debut?
character that's closely tied to Batman for me would I like to see make their
That's
live
a
action
tough
debut?
one because most of them have. Not all. I mean, there's a lot that haven't.
There's two that come to mind.
I can think of one right off the top of my head.
There's two that instantly come to mind. Obviously, Nightwing.
True. Well, he has made his live action debut in the show.
Where?
In Titans.
Oh, okay, I guess. That doesn't count because that's not the best interpretation of the character.
But that will be the argument.
Okay, fine. So I guess I can't say Red Hood either because he was portrayed in live action in that show, Titans as well, but also not the best take on the character. All right.
All of the heroes pretty much have.
Yes. That's lame.
But I can think of two really good villains right off the top of my head.
I'm trying to go heroes.
Yeah. Heroes are going to be hard because most of them have in either television or film.
Barbara's been, I mean, Damian has not, but he's gonna. So that still doesn't count because we know he's going to be the Robin in Brave and the Bold. Cassandra Cain.
I mean, you could say Damien.
Yeah, but that's going to be a cop out. We know he's coming.
That's fair. if you want to be really bold.
All right, so I guess I will go villains because technically Nightwing, Red Hood, and all the Bat family has appeared in some form.
Done.
But it sucks that it's like either been like CW or
true.
Titans where it's not.
It is totally.
I want a good Nightwing and a good Red Hood.
Yeah,
now,
how are you gonna?
No offense to anyone who played. I just want a proper blockbuster version of Red Hood and Nightwing. Anyway,
we're gonna get a lot of comments on that one.
We are. No hate to any of the actors, anyone on that. I'm just saying I just want, want it on the big screen. I guess I'll go villain then, which is easy. I'm gonna go Mad Hatter and Clayface.
Wow, you picked one. I was surprised you went Mad Hatter. I thought you were gonna
Mad Hatter.
I thought we were gonna be identical.
Jarvis Tech would be awesome.
Mad Hatter. I love Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter is one of my favorite
freaking
Batman villains.
Yeah, no.
So that was one of my two.
Mm-hmm.
And you said Clayface. Clayface is another great one.
Like, think how creepy, especially in Matt Reeves' verse.
Like kind of also like the doll. What was it? I'm having a brain fart.
Dollmaker.
The Dollmaker. Thank you.
Oh, that would be great. Ugh.
Yeah, that's the one that's nightmarish. I'm like, if you want to get like horror with Batman, Dollmaker would be.
Even the name is like Dollmaker. Why is her name Dollmaker? What is she makes dolls? Human dolls.
Yeah.
But no, Jarvis would be awesome because like I'm just thinking in my head, especially in the Matt Reeves verse, any verse, I would even like a more like fantastical Batman animated style.
Oh yeah.
Jarvis, that I would want that for everything. Just do Batman animated live action. It's all there for you. Dini has done it. Freaking Bruce Timm. The blueprints makes your job easier, Hollywood. But anyway, like the fact that it would be this crazy guy who invented like a chip who like, abducts girls or a girl to make her think she's Alice and like get real creepy, and you can get homicidal with that if you wanted to go like
really dark
Riddler's Matt Reeves style with it. And Clayface is he's kind of rumored, not confirmed. He is rumored to be getting something. And I mean, that's just awesome too. Like it's about time we get a Batman villain live action that's fantastical, if you will, not like a ground level like Riddler or Deathstroke or Joker, like someone who's like got superpowers and is going up against Batman. We haven't really seen that live action yet.
The other one that came to mind was Man-Bat.
Oh, that would be cool too.
That would be cool. If you did like, because you could go almost like a Dracula-esque.
You can make that creepy, and it's kind of
direction with it.
It's the mirror nightmare version of Batman too.
Exactly.
Literally, it's named backwards.
There's so many different cool elements that you could do to introduce mystery and kind of like a really dark edge to it.
That could be cool.
That would be something else. So on the Hulk side, I would say right off the top of my head, I would immediately say MODOK. As someone that the Hulk has kind of encountered multiple times throughout his time in comics.
We already saw him live action.
That's why I said I would have said MODOK, but I kind of still want to because that was so god awful what they did with
He's
MODOK.
An Avenger now, okay?
So bad. But I'll like you with Nightwing. I'll take that off the table. So I would say of everything, I think I would like to see them do. I want to say the Red King. From World War Hulk story. So that is one that's like right there. But the thing that I really would love to see them explore is the Immortal Hulk story and all the different levels of the Hulk's personality.
That would be a task.
Like the one above all, the one below all.
That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge story. And I would not want them to tell unless they were really committed to telling it, and it would have over an arc.
That means you don't want them to tell it.
It means it's never going to happen. But being able to kind of peel back that onion of what goes on in the psyche of Bruce Banner, and that whole concept of, is Bruce protecting the world from Hulk, or does Hulk protect the world from Bruce?
Yeah, that's a really cool.
That whole thing is just so cool, so compelling. The Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein bit element of those things, but just the psychological aspects of that story just could be really, really awesome and captivating. Yeah. And the monster side of it,
for sure,
be creepy as
it's
crap.
Like body horror all day long.
Yeah. So I think in the end, I think that would be my pick.
It'd be very much kind of like the Thing.
Yeah.
With like Hulk style.
So it's technically still the Hulk.
Yeah.
But it's like different parts of the
his
Hulk.
demons.
Yeah, it's the other characters that are a part of the Hulk ultimately, but that would be my pick. All right, so this will be our last question. Let's pick a good one here. They've all been good. Thank you guys so much for sending us all.
The other one sucks.
The other questions. No, but thank you guys all for sending in all of these questions for us to choose from. As always, we love interacting with you guys. It's been fun to finally get back to doing this. All right, so I'm tempted to ask the Secret Invasion question, but we already addressed it. How bad is Secret Invasion? And it's not good. Let's go to let's pick one.
Yeah, I think
YouTube.
the world
pick another one from
unanimously
Twitter.
agrees that Secret Invasion is not the best. The finale got like a 13%. I think the series as a whole is at like 53% or something like that.
That's really bad.
Yeah, it's not the best. Not the best.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
True or false?
All right. You know what? Just because I don't think we've actually talked about this part of it per se. What do you think of what we know of the overall slate of the DCU, of James Gunn's picks for the overall DCU slate? And do you think it will be a success with the audience?
Wow, it's that easy one. And you just took a left turn, huh?
Mm-hmm. I did.
I think from what we know, apparently it's only a quarter of chapter 1 from what he said a few months ago. I think it's pretty solid.
I wonder if that's true.
He could definitely be lying because he lied to us already about the Flash,
He
Mr.
sure
Gunn. That was a lie.
Mhm.
This is going to reboot and reset the DC universe as we know it. Oh, yeah? You're going to give us Clooney and then be like, hey, he's not the Batman going forward? Yeah, totally reset everything.
Ruining trust already.
For real. That's not a good first step. But I am optimistic. I think Superman Legacy, if that's a strong start, obviously your pillar and your core of any DC universe, no matter whether it's video games, comics, movies, cartoons, what have you, has to be Superman. He is the core of DC Comics, whether you love it or hate it. That is the truth. Then Batman Brave and the Bold, obviously he is another big piece. He would be the right hand. It's to the Jesus Christ of Superman, if you will. And then we got an Amazon show showing that they're going to do more Wonder Woman stuff. So it's apparently going to be a prequel. So we already got the Trinity lined up for projects.
Well, do you want me to read the exact list?
Yes. So far I got Legacy, Brave and the Bold, and Wonder Woman.
So it's chapter 1. That's what they announced. Chapter 1, yep. Gods and Monsters. Mm-hmm. So we're first getting Superman Legacy, as you said. Then we're getting The Authority.
That's cool.
Then we're getting The Brave and the Bold.
Heck yeah.
Also a film. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
If they do it like the comic book, that'll be amazing.
Yep. And also received really well if it's done.
Yeah. When they announced that, because the book was very good. Like I believe it was Tom King. It was received very well. And that announcement spiked that issue one big time, a lot.
So then after that, you've got Swamp Thing.
Heck yeah.
The return of Swamp Thing, which I think a lot of people will be looking to see some redemption for Swamp Thing.
Mangold. It's going to be horror for sure.
The Elseworlds Batman Part 2 with
Matt Reeves Batman.
Matt Reeves,
heck yeah.
Batman. Then Creature Commandos, the Max television show.
That's actually the first one they're releasing, which is funny.
Is it the first one?
That's what Gunn said. He said that'll be the first one.
Release date.
And then Superman
Summer
Legacy.
2025.
That was how old is that list though?
Let's see.
Because things have been getting shoveled around like crazy.
What a shock. Oh yeah, this is when they first announced.
Okay, yeah.
So
because he recently said that
see if I can find an updated announce or launch.
I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter as far as when they're released, as far as the projects themselves.
You're right, it does. So going back to it, Woman of Tomorrow, Brave and the Bold, Swamp Thing, The Authority, which I think is actually one of the more interesting ones, that the selections that they
kind of like that in Creature Commandos. He loves taking those obscure characters and trying to make them like,
that's like his MO.
Yeah, fan favorites.
Paradise Lost, which is the Wonder Woman
Amazon's
television series. You were talking about Booster Gold.
Oh, that's right. Booster Gold and Green Lantern, right?
These Booster Gold, Creature Commanders, Waller,
I forgot about that one.
And as you just said, Lanterns, which is going to be
that's extreme.
Some sort of a spin on the Green Lantern series, I assume.
That is extremely solid. That's not even the whole chapter 1. But he said again
that we know of.
That's a quarter of what they have planned.
I can't see that ending up being true though, because that's already a really like big slate.
Yeah, I mean, you got, if you're a DC fan, you got a new Superman, a new Batman and Robin. You finally got a Booster Gold. We're getting a Swamp Thing. You're getting more Wonder Woman. You're getting Green Lanterns, which we wanted since Ryan Reynolds' travesty, which even he makes fun of.
The return of Supergirl.
Creature Commandos, which is all new. That'll be fun. It kind of gives you a start like Guardians of the Galaxy, where not many people know them, so they can kind of do whatever they want. And Creature Commandos, same thing. So I think that's, and then Waller, which he said
and
will
the Authority, yeah.
He said Waller will kind of be like almost like a loose season 2 of Peacemaker in that sense. It's going to be very closely tied to obviously his Suicide Squad movie,
of course.
Peacemaker, which is like, Peacemaker is probably top 2 favorite things DC has done live action in the last several years.
So then of that list, what would you say is, what do you think, give me the top 3. What do you think is like the top 3 most anticipated, you think like this is going to set it off? This is going to set things in the right direction.
The things that'll, like always, it's so generic, but the thing that's going to make or break it is going to be Superman, Batman, which would be Brave and the Bold, and then I would throw in Green Lanterns. I think if those hit, you're good. If they don't hit, people are going to get very worried. Very, very. People have been wanting that Green Lantern Corps or show forever. And it's their chance to get redemption on Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern, which even he knows was not great and makes fun of in Deadpool. So if they miss that, no. And if you miss Superman, getting rid of Cavill, and then you botch it up with this new thing that you got rid of Cavill for,
man. Yeah.
No.
That's mine. That's mine. It's after the entire fiasco around Henry Cavill.
The ladies are upset. They don't get to look at Cavill anymore either.
It's a universally bad situation. I think after everything that happened with Henry Cavill and Superman, and just even the storytelling aspect of it around Superman, I think you've got to nail that one. I think that's the one. You've got to get that one right. If you get that one right. And
it's also the first one too.
Yeah.
The first live action thing they're doing. Film, so it's setting the tone. And it's written and directed by the CEO of DC Studios, James Gunn, or co-CEO.
Yeah.
So
and if they get that right, I think that there will be a lot more, the audience will be a lot more forgiving on some of these others.
His casting is pretty, I mean, I don't know too much about
Not too forgiving.
Yeah.
You got to make good quality content across the board.
The casting for Superman has been pretty dope thus far.
I
and
think
the fact that
we're
getting Guy Gardner in there, we're getting Mr. Terrific and all that stuff, a Hawk Girl.
Which I think is interesting about the Guy Gardner part, because it's going to be like, how is that going to lead into Lanterns?
That's true. Mm-hmm. And you know what we need though? There's people have been like, this has been a rumor, but I want it to be true. Brendan Fraser as Pa Kent.
Yes, we've talked about that. That would be. Because Brendan Fraser is just such a lovable guy.
Yeah, he's like perpetually crying and like, anyway, like in a sweet way. He's just happy to be alive. He's like, you say one nice thing, he's like, "Why stop it?" But that's like kind of how you want.
I just want to know I did one good thing.
That movie was great, but like I totally see him nailing like that, like loving father who just wants to like see his son be accepted in this world. Yeah. Like that's totally up his alley.
He does empathy really, really well.
Yes. So, which is funny because it's Tarzan.
Like tough.
Or George, that's Tarzan.
Well, like tough empathy. It's what, he does empathy, and he does also tough empathy really well. He did, he played like the hero and things like The Mummy. Yeah. But then he's played the more empathetic character in several other roles.
And George.
Yeah.
Watch out for that tree.
The jungle. Yeah. So that I think that if you get Superman right, but I do think some of these other, I also think that like at least one of these other stories that they're telling, because everyone is going to automatically expect Superman. Everyone's going to automatically expect the Brave and the Bold, the Wonder Woman stuff. They're going to expect like, you got to put your best foot forward on those because those are the big characters, right? But I think people are going to be watching to see like, okay, well, what are you going to do with stuff like the Authority?
But I think people are going to be more accepting of that because no one's going to have any preconceived, notion going in.
Yeah, but I think people really are looking for something new.
Yeah,
they're looking for something new on top of, we want to see you tell good stories with the characters we like, but people are looking for something fresh.
Something cool.
Something new, fresh. And I think that will go along. If they can nail one or two of those, that will go a long way to establishing a really positive footing for the DCU.
It's kind of like what he did with the Guardians, where they were not
correct
household names before.
Yep.
And then he did it, it hit. So
yeah.
He's the guy to do it with. He loves pulling, even we see him in Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, he loves pulling those kind of more D-list, C-list characters and making them really cool.
Yeah. But that wraps up our questions.
Yes.
There's a lot more, guys. There's a lot more questions, and
we gotta do rapid fire next time.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this again. We'll do this again next month. We'll do this. Maybe try and do this.
I think we did that in the past. Yeah. We're like minute on the clock. You can't rant for more than a minute. This is just get through them quicker.
Yes, we did. So we'll probably get back. We'll probably try and do this at least once a month. And maybe what we'll do is we'll make it like, one half of the podcast, and we'll just do rapid fire questions. So we'll be back to get more questions from you guys here in the near future. But that pretty much wraps it up, my dude.
Yep. So with that said, we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.